What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down the Ambetter Health 400 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and this is not your old Atlanta. We are super speedway racing this weekend, which means probably going to be a bit chaotic, definitely a lot harder to project than last week, which I loved last week. Boring races tend to be better for DFS purposes. And I had a ton of people reach out to me either on Twitter or Discord that they had a great week last week, so that was absolutely awesome to see. But with that being said, please be careful this week, and I'd recommend going a little bit lighter. Enjoy the race. It should be a fun one to watch. As far as DFS is concerned, it's going to be tough because could it be a wreck fest? Could it not? Are we going to see a guy dominate? I'm not really sure. We have very limited data with Atlanta. I am playing this as a typical super speedway race for the most part with some twists. But again, we have very limited data to work with here. So enjoy the race, have fun, but don't think this is like the past 2 weeks where we have a ton of practice data to work with and we kind of know what to expect, because honestly we do not. But the one thing we can do is try to project what the field's going to do, and then we can try to deviate from there, which is going to be the key to winning this weekend. But anyway, if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. You can also find me live on Sunday mornings breaking down the entire slate and answering literally any single question you guys have. And I'm planning on being live around 11 a.m. Eastern, so come in, hang out, have fun. It's always a good time. Highly recommend you being there. And if you do enjoy today's free content, the only thing I ask in return is leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet done so, and feel free to leave a comment down below, being nice, being mean. I don't really care either way, but I'd love to hear from you. And really quick, let me mention our sponsors, because they do make these videos possible and they're free, so I guess we can't complain too much, right? But anyway, we have Underdog and Prize Picks here, two very fun sites to play on. I would not recommend it to you all if I didn't play there myself. Absolutely love both sites. And you can use promo code CPEN to get an instant deposit match bonus up to $100 on either site. Use the link down below or head over to the websites at underdog.com or Prize Picks, or download the apps. I don't really care how you use it, but it's very fun to play on. So again, that's promo code CPEN, instant deposit match bonus up to $100. Anyway, moving on to the strategy portion of this video. Again, we have very limited data to work with at Atlanta, so we got to be careful this week, because we can act like we know what's going to happen, but let's be honest, we do not. The only thing we can do this week is try to project how the field's going to go. So ownership projections and my sim scores tab I think is going to come in quite handy this week, because we're going to see the optimal percentages compared to projected ownership, and I'll just try to get leverage there, because yes, guys like Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, you know, those big names starting mid-pack, they're going to project out very well, but the ownership might be a little bit higher than what they expect to be in the optimal compared to my projections, so we can find leverage from there. I have not yet ran anything, so I'm just kind of speaking in general and using examples. I don't think I meant that 100% yet. That might be the case. But just know, super speedway racing, they're going to be in packs, they're going to be drafting. The thing is, though, last year we did see the front row be optimal, and they let a large chunk of laps, which we don't typically see at like a Daytona or Talladega. Now, they did shorten the race. It was 500 miles last year, now it's 400. So there's different things going on. So it's going to be tough to project. I currently have this set up in my model as a super speedway race, although not quite as conservative as I'd have it for like a Daytona. Like a Daytona, I think I had the winner projected in like the teens. This week I have them in like the 10, 11 range. And I also don't have some of the scrubs projected to finish in the mid-20s. They're in the late 20s, so it's not as much of a super speedway. It's still hybrid, but it's still a super speedway tendencies in the model here. So while I'm not going to be as interested as the absolute scrubs in the back as I normally would, I'm still going to be rostering it as pretty much as a plate race. Because if you look at the other drivers that were optimal, it's still mainly place differential for the most part. But that's not to say I'm not going to take some stabs at guys starting closer to the front. I am more than willing to do that at this track than I would be at a Daytona or Talladega, like a Keselowski starting in fourth. I normally would not touch that at all at Daytona. Although at this kind of track, with the speed the Ford's shown in qualifying, I think it might be worth some stabs. And I hate to say it, but guys like Logano, Blaney starting inside the top 5 as well, they might be playable. Now, projection-wise, the model's not going to like them because they got the winner finishing like 12th. But I still think it's worth taking some stabs, just in case we see a repeat of last year. If a guy leads 100 laps and wins the race, no matter where they're starting, you're going to want them in your lineup. So it's still a super speedway type of roster construction for me, but it's not going to be as conservative, and I'm only going to take some bigger chances on drivers starting closer to the front and less chances on like the scrubs of BJ McLeod, Cody Ware, in case we don't see an absolute wreck fest. And finally, moving on to the driver by driver breakdown portion here. Qualifying just ended a little bit ago, so this is my first rundown through the entire slate here. We have qualifying uploaded, and that's really about it. So let's do some first reactions here. Although first I have to mention, if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, which We kind of crushed it last week. Tons of takedowns and lots of good stuff in the Discord. And we're in there 24/7, literally. I'm not exaggerating that. It's always a fun time in there. Have all my sim scores posted, projected ownership projections for each site, the optimizer, ownership projections, my cash and tournament article, and much, much more. It's on there. I'm just not going to bore you guys to death. Links down below in the description for that if you want to join. And the pricing is very fair compared to everybody else in the industry. So come in, check it out. I think you will find some value there. But anyway, let's break down this slate here. So we're going to start up top with the man, Kyle Larson, $11,200 on DK. A lot cheaper over on FanDuel at 10.5. He's starting in 9th, and he currently has the best odds to win this race over in Vegas, which does not make much sense to me just because it's a super speedway and Kyle Larson kind of sucks at these tracks. Now, it's a bit of a hybrid, so I'd be more willing to play Kyle Larson here than I would at any other one like Daytona or Talladega. The problem is, though, he's just really expensive. He's not going to offer us that much place differential upside. I'd much rather play William Byron or Kyle Busch. But I feel like a lot of people have that same thought process where they'd want to play William Byron over Kyle Larson. So maybe there will be some leverage there. If this ends up being more intermediate than super speedway, maybe we see Kyle Larson get up front and dominate. I don't really expect that to happen. I'm just saying there's a chance for us. I'm not going to completely write him off since he's starting in 9th and we have a little bit of place differential upside. But he's definitely not going to be my favorite. And I would prefer William Byron without factoring in ownership. But he's viable. It's not like he's on the pole or anything. So I'll probably have a little bit of Kyle Larson, but I'm not going to love it. I think he's a better play over on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Then William Byron, 10.9 on DK, 14 over on FanDuel. He's starting in 11th. Last year's winner at this race, led over 100 laps, got the win. I believe he started in a very similar spot as well. I can pull up their super speedway data because we don't have any practice to look at. So this is just the past 7 races, which was 6 races from last year at super speedways and then Daytona earlier this season. And William Byron, when he's not wrecking, he typically runs pretty well at the super speedways. He has a tendency to do that a lot. But at Atlanta here, if he repeated what he did last year, yeah, you're going to want him in your lineup. He's won the past 2 races. He's been extremely fast. He's no longer cheap, though. DraftKings has finally priced him up, and FanDuel did as well. I think he's a fine play, but I'm only going to play him in tournaments. I would not go there in cash games, just because starting just outside the top 10, don't have a ton of upside if he doesn't, finish in the top 5. There's a lot more place differential drivers like Kyle Busch here, starting 6 spots further back. He comes in at 10.7, a little bit cheaper over on FanDuel as well. He's starting in 17th, and honestly, he probably could have won the Daytona 500 before getting screwed at the end there in overtime. But looking back to last season, in a 7-race sample size, 3 top 10 finishes and 6 top 20s. So I think Kyle Busch will be a very popular play, and rightfully so. Now, do I want to play him in cash games or not? Well, I'm still kind of iffy on that. I'm going to have to see what the projections say in projected ownership because there's a lot more place differential drivers the further down we go. And I really hate playing drivers mid-pack at super speedways. It's just tough because this is a bit of a hybrid track. So we'll have to talk about that in the live stream tomorrow after I run some ownership. I don't think he's a bad play in projection-wise. He's actually probably going to grade out pretty well. So I do like Kyle Busch, but maybe more so for tournaments. Then we have the 2 Penske boys, Ryan Blaney, 10,400 on DraftKings. We have Joey Logano at 10.2. They're starting 3rd and 1st. If I had to pick between the 2, I will take Blaney just because he starts a couple spots further back. And he's got a really good car, it looks like. And he's got really good cars at super speedways and almost each and every single time. He was good at Atlanta last year. Ended up getting into the wall, I believe, in the last lap. But 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s in the top 20 each and every single time. And it can certainly be a lap leader. And I would not be surprised at all if we see Blaney and Logano be the 2 main dominators in this race. I have not yet ran my dominator tool, but I imagine they're going to be 1-2. And there, Logano will probably be first because he's on the pole. But I think both drivers can certainly dominate. But if you're playing Blaney and Logano, they have to pretty much dominate and win the race. That's their only paths to being optimal, but I think it's possible. And the Fords looked extremely strong in qualifying. I think they have like the first 8 spots, I want to say, until Kyle Larson broke it up in 9th there. But yeah, they look pretty fast. So I'm willing to play them in tournaments just a little bit. But if they're going to be really high owned, I will definitely be underweight. But I'm still going to get some shares. If this was Daytona, I would completely fade these 2. But since it's Atlanta and it's a little bit different, I'm willing to take some shares, but I'm still going to be underweight. Ross Chastain, $10,000. He's starting in 18th. Had a pretty good run at Atlanta last year. And super speedways in general were very good to Ross. I mean, starting in 18th, we have some nice place differential upside. He's a little bit cheaper than Kyle Busch. They're pretty similar plays. But Ross Chastain won at Talladega last year. He had 4 top 5s in 7 races, 5 top 10s. I definitely think he's in play here, so he's someone I'm certainly looking to roster. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have Denny Hamlin at $9,800. He's starting in 15th. We know he's one of the best plate racers out there, although since the start of 2022, he only has 1 top 15 finish and 3 top 20s. Just goes to show that luck is a big factor at these track types, but I think he's fine here starting in 15th. I'm not in love with it because there's not a ton of place differential. I think the ownership is probably going to be higher than what it should be, but I'm willing to roster him, but I would not go there in cash games. Christopher Bell, $9,500. He's spun in the second round of qualifying, so he's going to be starting in 10th. He's a fine plate racer. I know he was going to finish like second or third in the first Atlanta race last year. Then he got the penalty for going below the double yellow line, which really sucked because I had a ton of Christopher Bell because he was really chalky. I think he was starting in the 30s in that race. So that kind of killed us, but I'm fine playing Bell. But again, only in tournaments. Just if you're starting inside the top pretty much 20, you're just pretty much a tournament play at these kind of tracks. And if you're outside the top 20, you're in play for everywhere. It's pretty much as simple as it gets. Kevin Harvick at $9,300. Really cheap over on FanDuel. I think you can, I mean, he's affordable on both sides. I'm not really sure how much pricing is going to be an issue this week. But $8,000 on FanDuel is really cheap. The problem is he's starting in 6th. And he's fine at finishing these races well, but he's going to have to basically be a top 5 contender. And if you're playing on DraftKings, he basically has to win the race. So I don't see myself having too much Kevin Harvick here because he typically is not a contender to win, but he's a contender to finish well. But that's not going to get the job done for where he's starting. Alex Bowman, $9,100. He's starting in 14th. FanDuel pricing doesn't look as bad over there at only $9,000, and we typically see him be a top 10, top 15 guy at these track types as long as he stays clean, which he's been better at since the start of 2022. Average finish 15.7 and 3 top 10s as well. So I'm okay with Bowman in tournaments. Dropping out of the 8K range, we have our first probably really chalky play here at Martin Truex Jr. at $8,900, 95 over on FanDuel, starting in 29th. Going to offer us a ton of place differential. And out of the past 7 races at super speedways, we have 6 top 15s and 3 top 10s. So by all means, I'd be playing Truex in cash games, and I think he's an excellent play overall. Tyler Reddick, $8,700, another Toyota here, starting in 16th. Was a hero last week. Not really sure that's going to be the case this weekend. He just has terrible luck at these track types, and doesn't offer us a ton of place differential anyway, dating back to since the beginning of 2022. We're talking an average finish of 28.6, running position at 20th, and only 1 top 20 in 7 races. So Tyler Reddick, if you're playing him, he'll have low ownership, that's for sure. He starts right around guys like Bowman, Bell, Chastain, Busch, and Hamlin. So he's definitely a pivot there. Even Bubba Wallace is in that range. So if you're looking for the low owned guy, go for it because a lot of this is going to be luck anyway. So I feel like Reddick actually might show some positive leverage, but we'll have to see. Brad Keselowski, $8,500. He's starting in 4th. Very similar plays to guys like Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney. If you're playing him, you're expecting him to dominate or win the race or both. And the chances of that happening are probably pretty slim. So I'd be definitely underweight on Keselowski. I do think he'll pick up some ownership just because he's a good racer at these track types. But Wallace, $8,300. Really cheap over on DraftKings. A little more expensive over on FanDuel, but I expect some decent ownership on him. Just a really good super speedway driver. Starting at 19th mid-pack, which does make it a little bit scary. Like, all these guys are iffy for cash games before they're starting. It's just tough to gauge because Atlanta, I don't think, is going to be as much of a wreck fest as Daytona. But, again, that's TBT. We just don't have as much data to work with. We saw 12 cars wreck out in the first Atlanta race. Then we saw 11 in the second one. So, we'll see. Not quite half the field or anything like a Daytona, but, I mean, still a decent amount of carnage. But, you know, last year we had some tire issues, which I'm not sure we're really going to see that again this season. So, it might even be cleaner. And honestly, I would not be surprised if we see this race go pretty clean until like the last few laps or something. So we'll see her end of stages. I'm not really sure. But I do like Bubba Wallace here. He's going to project out pretty well. I mean, finished in the top 20 each and every single time at these tracks last year. Average finish of 13.3, which is honestly one of the best marks in the entire field here, only behind a couple drivers like Ryan Blaney, Allmendinger, but, you know, much smaller sample size. So, and also Martin Truex Jr., surprisingly, who was not really a good super speedway driver at all. Some guy usually faded every single time we went to one, but kind of got it together last season and ended up putting out some pretty good numbers. So I like Bubba in tournaments. Just not sure I'll get quite there in cash games. I do like the price point. Chase Briscoe, $8,100. The last of the Ford train here in the top 10. But he's starting in 8th, and he's okay. He's got a couple of top 10s, but for where he's starting, I don't see myself having too much Briscoe. He's going to have to get up front and probably finish top 3 for it to work out. Even that's not a guarantee. So if you're playing Briscoe, you're kind of hoping he wins the race, which I don't think is a likely scenario. It's possible, so I'm not going to have 0% Briscoe, but if I'm playing like 3 max, I'm definitely not getting to him. Dropping out of the 7K range, we have no driver that I think should pick up some ownership here. Daniel Suarez at $7,800. Really cheap over on FanDuel at $6,800. He's starting in 26, and since last year at the super speedways, we're talking 4 top 10s, which, you know, he's going to project out pretty well starting in 26. I think the ownership's going to be pretty high. I think he's a fine cash game play, and I'm okay with him in all formats. Average finish of 14th since last season. Austin Dillon at $7,600. He's starting in 13th. Don't hate him in tournaments. Typically a guy that can run close to the front, if not the front, at super speedways. Does have a win at one recently, 2 top 5s and 3 top 15s. I just hate where he's starting. He's right around a lot of drivers that offer some place differential upside, like Daniel Suarez, Eric Jones, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick even. So it's going to be tough to get to him, but the ownership will be low. Eric Jones, $7,500, a driver that I think is going to be fine in all formats. Definitely a contender to be in the cash lineup this week if you are playing cash. I'm not really sure I want to play cash this week, but tournaments I'll definitely be on. But starting all the way back on the 28th, he's going to project pretty well here. Average running position of 12.7 since last year, which is the best of all drivers in the next-gen car. One of the best drive ratings. Doesn't have a win, but a top 5, 3 top 10s in the top 25 out of 7 races. Also led some laps last year too. So I think Eric Jones is a pretty fine play here. Josh Berry starting in 21st. He comes in at $7,300. He's in the Hendrick 9 car, so we know he's going to have some speed. We don't really need data to work with because he has not ran super speedway race in the next-gen car. But starting in 21st, I think he could be a top 20 contender. But to be honest, I'd rather get the guys like Jones and Suarez and probably even Austin Dillon. We'll see how he handles the draft. I mean, we know he's a good driver. He did good last week. I believe he cracked the top 10. It's much better on the short track, but this is definitely a different animal this weekend. Then we have 2 fast forwards here. Chris Buescher at $7,200. He's starting in 7th. It's tough. It's kind of like that Chase Briscoe play where if you're playing Buescher, if you're playing Briscoe, if you're playing Almirola, you need them to be in the top 3 pretty much because there's place differential around them, especially in this price range where you have Priest, Stenhouse, Dinger, Haley, LaJoie. All these guys offer a lot of place differential, so the paths are really tough. I'll more than likely be underweight on these drivers, and if they happen to win, whatever, so be it. But I think their win percentage is probably going to be in like that 2 to 3% range, and that's probably what it's going to take to be optimal is to win. So I think it only makes sense to kind of reflect that in your exposures. Dropping down to the 6K range, we have Ryan Priest at $6,800, really cheap over on FanDuel. He's starting in 24th. Don't really have much data to work with, so I don't really think these numbers mean too much. Yes, an average finish of 36, but it's also a one race sample size compared to 7 for some of these other drivers. It doesn't really mean too much. An average running position of 15.6 before he wrecked at Daytona. I'm fine playing him starting in 24th. He'll have less ownership than Stenhouse, probably less ownership than Dinger, definitely less than Gibbs, LaJoie, and probably even Haley. That might be close. But I'd prefer him over Buescher and Almirola, but he's kind of just in that range where if the optimizer gives me 15%, I'll be okay with it. If it gives me 20%, it is what it is. There's not really much to say about Ryan Priest, to be honest, though. Ricky Stenhouse, $6,700. Your most recent winner at a Super Speedway won the Daytona 500, which was his like first top 20 in the next-gen car at a Super Speedway. He just wrecks almost each and every single time. But when he doesn't wreck, good things can happen because he's won at Daytona before. And he's a guy that can get up front, run up front. It's just he tends to get wrecked a lot, but he stayed clean in the last race, and he ended up winning, which that's the upside Ricky Stenhouse offers you. Starting in 27th, I'm fine playing him. Cash games, tournaments. I mean, he's in that range where he's viable for cash games. Starting 25th on back. Austin Cindric, pretty much the same play as Blenny and Logano. If you're playing him, he's got to win the race. I don't really see that happening, though, but he has one-on-one before. He also has 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s. Like, he's a very good Super Speedway driver. Team Penske tends to run up front. It's just starting in second, you basically have to win the race, which, again, chances are that probably will not happen. Like, I believe I have Logano or Blaney projected to win the race, and that's like only a 6 to 7% chance to win. So we're talking a guy like Cindric, that's even less. And for him to be in the optimal lineup is just a tough path. AJ Allmendinger, $6,300. He's starting in 30th, finished 6th at Daytona because we're talking a one-race sample size. I mean, just starting so far back, it's going to make him viable in any format, so I have no problem at all playing a lot of Dinger. Justin Haley, $6,100. He's starting in 20th. His teammate, he got hit with a pretty big points penalty. I think he's sitting at negative 40 points now after the issue last week, got caught with Hendrick. So he's definitely in a hole. So he's going to be gunning to have a chance to win this race because he's not going to win at any other track. So he's going to have to win at one of these super speedways more than likely. So I don't mind taking some stabs at Justin Haley in tournaments. He's actually a pretty good driver at these track types, has 4 top 15s in the next-gen car at super speedways. So he's a tournament play. Definitely have low ownership than guys like Dinger, LaJoie, and Gibbs. So it could be a pivot there. Corey LaJoie starting in 31st, almost won an Atlanta race last year before getting into the wall at the end. Chase Elliott kind of bullied him around. But we know he runs really well with these track types, has 4 top 20s in the next-gen car and a 7-race sample size. So if you're playing cash games, LaJoie definitely going to be a good starting point, I think. I think a lot of people will play LaJoie. Ty Gibbs in $5,900, starting us off in the 5K range. He's starting in 35th, and going to be hard to avoid him here. Cash games, yeah, he's going to be pretty much an auto play. He's in good equipment, starting in the very back, only behind BJ McLeod. So assuming he doesn't wreck out early on, he's probably going to gain you close to 10, 15 spots, maybe even 20. I mean, at these tracks, as long as you survive, you can have a ton of place differential upside. So yeah, Ty Gibbs going to have a lot of ownership, rightfully so. It's a plate track, and you're in the very back. So yeah, we're going to play you pretty much. Michael McDowell, $5,700. He's starting in 12th. Pretty similar plays to guy like Austin Dillon, Chris Buescher, Eric Almirola, Chase Briscoe, kind of in that range, although he offers just a little bit more place differential than a few of those drivers, and he's a pretty good super speedway guy. I mean, 3 top 10s, 4 top 15s since the start of 2022. If you're looking for a pivot off of a guy like Ty Gibbs, Michael McDowell's not a terrible choice because he has legit race winning upside, top 5 potential, and say Gibbs finishes 25th, but McDowell finishes like 2nd or 3rd. We definitely have more leverage on Michael McDowell there, and he would outscore Ty Gibbs. Noah Gragson, $5,500. He's starting in 22nd. Not a ton of interest there. We have a 7-race sample size with him in the next gen car at the super speedways with an average finish of 24.3, which is right on par with his running position. He's probably going to need some decent amount of carnage for it to work out. I'm not super excited about it, but he does have 3 top 20s and also 1 top 15 with a top 5 mixed in there too. Then we have Burton starting in 33rd. I really don't have much to say here. I mean, he's basically in that Ford Penske car, and they tend to have speed at these track types, so I have no problem playing Burton. He's viable for cash games. He's just starting in the back. He's cheap. Play him. As long as he doesn't wreck out early, he's going to offer you a lot of place differential upside. Todd Gillen at $5,300. He's starting in 23rd. I'm okay with him. Front row cars tend to have speed at these tracks. Does have a top 10 and a couple of top 20s. He's not going to be as good as Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell is just a really good super speed driver, but he's a fine pivot off of Burton in tournaments. That's really the only thing nice I can say about Gillen. It's just a matter of not wrecking out. Ty Dillon, $5,100. He's starting in 25th. I typically like him with these track types, but he's not in a good car anymore. He used to be in the 42 car, and then he used to be the 13 car, and now he's in the 77 for Spire. And last time we played Ty Dillon at a super speedway, he was in the very back. He was chalky, and then he immediately has an engine issue. So hopefully it doesn't happen again, but I'm not really excited about playing Ty Dillon here in 25th. Probably have some pretty low ownership. Then we have the scrubs. If this was Daytona, I'd be all about these guys, but not super interested at these track types. Although, in case there is mass carnage here and we lose 20 cars, you're going to want some exposure to these drivers. So let's say they're like 2 to 3% owned. It wouldn't hurt you to be like 5 to 6% on these drivers. That's still like double the field. If they're 3% owned, like 6 to 8%, something like that. You have to be prepared for both things here, because if it's a clean race, you don't want to be too heavy on some of these scrub place differential drivers. But if it is mass carnage, you're going to want some exposure to them just because their ownership is going to be low, and they'll gain you a free 10 to 15 spots. With that being said, guys, that's all I got for you this week. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to make fun of me, I don't care. Leave them down in the comment section down below, and I'll be more than happy to get back with you. Also, the live stream will be at 11 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, so come in, say hi. Love to see you. And if you want to check out all the extra content I have over on the Patreon, links down below in the description for that. With that being said, I'll get out of here. Wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.